Yeah. Hey, Michelle, you want to kick us off?
Happy to. Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. I hope you're having a wonderful fall and had a great weekend. Today is exciting. We get to hear from the McKinsey Institute. I believe Sarah is our guest speaker today. So we're very excited for that. So I'll pass it to Matt first for some updates. Matt, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Michelle Burris from the Century Foundation, one of our BFFs, long time. It's October 20th here, 2025. This is the AMCC's National 30-minute call, same time every Monday, 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central, 9:30 Mountain, and 8:30 Pacific. I'm Matt Bogosian, Executive Director of AMCC, the nation's manufacturing community of practice. David Van Sicklen is our Operations Director, and as you know, this call happens every Monday and has been happening every week for about a decade, except, of course, on federal holidays, which is what we had last Monday. So welcome back. We have two kinds of these weekly AMCC 30-minute Monday calls, roundtable calls, where we go around the country talking to you all, listening from practitioners from public, private, nonprofit sector stakeholders in regions around the country, manufacturers, or what we call the manufacturing ecosystem of support, working to help produce priority products for the American project. Yeah, focused on this really emerging science of what manufacturers in regions need to thrive, what we call the big six elements of the ecosystem of support: workforce, infrastructure, research, entrepreneurship, supply chain support, trade, international investment, operational improvement, and capital access. We also have presentation calls like today when we hear from someone who we expect can add value to all of our work to come to a common understanding of how we produce those priority products in regions. And in either kind of call, we do two quick things at the start. One is we like to highlight a couple of things from the AMCC update newsletter that goes along with this weekly Monday national call. And then that comes out every Friday. And then second, we like to have a couple of people introduce themselves or reintroduce themselves, where they are geographically in the US and where they're working in manufacturing or the manufacturing ecosystem of support. So that's an important tactic to model the imperative that we need to build trusted relationships around common narratives to build the evidence-based strategies that inform our individual and organizational actions in the short, medium, and long term. So ultimately, we get to better structures that result in producing those priority products, which is cool. Back to the AMCC update newsletter, getting these better structures is something like that we've been highlighting in the AMCC newsletter consistently, because we have an opportunity to do that. In that newsletter, it's packed, of course, with a whole bunch of insights and funding opportunities, collaboration initiatives, meetups in regions and stuff like that. But we've been really pushing this RFI, this request for information on how we, for next year, there's going to be a new national strategy for advanced manufacturing. And there's input, it's an input opportunity for all of us to chime in on what that ought to be. And so for yourself, you can do it personally, you can do it for your organization, you can get it out to your network. That deadline is December 12th. So that's cool. Other things that are in the update, in addition to the links to that RFI, and AMCC also has some big ideas that we put out there to stimulate your own big ideas. But other things that are in Friday's update were a lot of meetups are happening. Of course, we have manufacturing day, week, and month for a lot of folks. A lot of cool things that are happening. Our friends in Connecticut have their aerospace and defense conference. It'll be held November 4th through the 6th. Our friends in Utah, 47G, have a big summit November 4th and 5th, focusing on dual use technologies and products for the defense industry. Anyway, again, lots of good articles. Our friends at Urban Manufacturing Alliance, you might know Katie Stanton and Audra Ladd. Their new organizational name is now Mechanism. So that's happening in there. So we talk a little bit about that. and so much more. So that's it on the AMCC update newsletter. A quick summary there. Check out lots of good funding opportunities in there too. Now let's turn, before we get to our speaker, let's do a few intros and kind of model what's going on. If you just raise your hand if you're new, you want to introduce yourself real quick, that would be great. Let's see. Jeanette Jones in Memphis. Tell us how that. Tell us where you are and where you are in the ecosystem of support. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys. Look, we are just coming off our biggest manufacturing day celebration ever. We're in the throes of manufacturing month. So I am with the Greater Memphis Chamber in Memphis, Tennessee. We were recently named the #1 chamber out of 1,700 chambers across the country. So we're excited about that. So I will continuously tell our story loud and proud. We always say we're not your breakfast chamber. We work in a lot of different spaces and places, a lot of non-traditional work. One of the things that we have, my role, I am the director of our Advanced Manufacturing Council, where we gather manufacturers in one room and have thought partnership, and the meeting is led by them. They tell us what's needed to make their companies go around. One of the main conversations that we had a meeting October the 2nd, and they talked about skills taught versus skills that are needed. So I thought that was really interesting, and that just kind of piqued a great just started a great conversation with our community colleges, our high schools, and education partners, just because we know STEM is a big piece of that. So I can
That's
go
for
on and
sure.
on about our
Yeah,
work, but I
that's
want to
great,
stop
Jeanette.
there. And
Thank
just,
you.
thank you for the shout out. But we're busy in
Yeah.
Memphis, and please feel free to look us up at greatermemphischamber.com and connect with me. I'll drop my email in the chat if you want to learn more about our work.
Thank you, Jeanette. Barbara Pinnell Janes in Colorado.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Matt. Um, Jeanette, congratulations. And like you, we have a very thriving manufacturing month here. We just had our Rocky Mountain Advanced Manufacturing Expo, which was a huge hit. And then last week we did Naturally Colorado. People think of us of aerospace and defense, but we have a really thriving CPG community that we don't talk about enough. That Bobo's, Cliff Bars, Udi's, Spinster Sister, Justin's Peanut Butter all came out of Boulder, Colorado. So we do great manufacturing here. And I am looking for braiding manufacturers that I can do a beta test with. I have a new product from a mechanical engineer that I work with, and we're looking for beta testers to make your life easier. So thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, Barbara. And as you've seen in the chat, if you're new to this, use the chat, put your own info in there, but use it to share, research or other tactics. Barbara, you could quickly describe in there what you're looking for, and we want to make the most of this 30 minutes every week. This is a tactic that has been quite useful. Going back, Sarah, it's great to have you on here. Going back to this IMCP initiative, that's really where this call was born. So it's been happening every Monday for about 10 years. We can talk more about that. Let me introduce you in a minute. Anyone else want to quickly introduce themselves and where they are in the country and what they're working on? Yeah, real quick. If you're new, don't be shy. This is okay. The water's warm. This is a friendly group. We are free, open source, nonprofit. We're designated by the Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration as the nation's manufacturing community of practice. So we're here for you all. And so let's see. Let's do one more here. Let's see. How about let's see. Doug Merrill, tell us where you are. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm Doug Merrill. I'm the Regional Innovation Officer for the Vermont Gallium Nitride Tech Hub out of the University of Vermont. And we're hard at work preparing our response to the notice of funding for the 2025 Tech Hub's implementation grant that was announced back in September 19th. We had a fairly strong proposal in the 2024 notice of funding. It was funded in December. It was canceled in May. But we believe we've got a really strong platform that we've been able to revise somewhat. It's not a big change in direction, but we've learned a lot in the past year and a half while we've been waiting for this notice of funding. And the current administration has some different priorities for these funds. And so we've been working with our partners to make those adjustments and are working hard to meet our November 7th deadline. So that's kind of what's keeping us busy. It's super exciting. Lots and lots of advancements in the wide bandgap semiconductor field that we're trying to stay abreast of and make sure we remain relevant to those efforts.
Yeah, you are, Doug, and we all are here, and that's what we're trying to operationalize, right? This is a federal tactic, a bottom-up intervention that we have experimented with over the last 15 years, and it's great to have Sarah Tucker Ray here from McKinsey on here because of your street cred in one of those bottom-up initiatives during the same time that the IMCP initiatives started out. It's the Strong Cities, Strong Communities, and that's just one of the many great experiences, Sarah, that you've had along the way. You're now a partner at McKinsey, part of McKinsey's Institute for Economic Mobility. As folks know, McKinsey's a big management consulting firm, like some of the others that have been active in the AMCC community. Kevin Ross at Accenture and Joe Mariani from Deloitte, all great partners. Sarah has a great background, like I was saying. She was part of that Strong Cities, Strong Communities in a bunch of regions around the country. So Sarah, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself, your work. Man, you publish a lot of articles, very impressive. So welcome to the AMCC Monday Call. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's so good to be here with all of you. And as Matt had mentioned, my name is Sarah. I'm joined today by my colleague, Kellum. Both of us are part of McKinsey's Institute for Economic Mobility. I lead our pillar focused on rural America and economic mobility in particular. And I also, in my work as a partner at McKinsey, work with organizations broadly who are looking to make major change. And that tends to, for me, mean I work in operations for government agencies. And then I also work with affiliated organizations in the nonprofit, philanthropic sector, and private companies as well. Matt, I wonder if you orchestrated this, but hi, Jeanette. I'm from Memphis originally, so it's good to see you here. My family is all in rural Mississippi, and I also lived in Louisiana and in rural Florida for a while, so rural is near and dear to my heart in that respect. But I've also worked in economic development in cities. So I worked in Memphis city government there. I worked in New Orleans city government as well. And then I worked at the federal level, as Matt had mentioned. So it's great to be connected. I imagine we all have a lot of connections in that front. And what we wanted to talk to you a little bit about today, we thought would be interesting, is some of the work that we have done of thinking about manufacturing's role in rural America in particular. And so our Institute for Economic Mobility broadly is about how do we help create more financial opportunity for people, regions, communities who have not had that access historically. And so the work that we've been doing focused on rural has been to say, what are the opportunities right now? Manufacturing is a big part of that, as we'll talk about. And what can we do in galvanizing the field to really make sure that local residents benefit from those jobs and from investment that's coming? So we've been in a number of conversations with philanthropists who are looking to invest in rural. I was just in conversation with a few big financial institutions who are also thinking about what they do in rural and finding businesses to invest in, providing access to capital, thinking about workforce development, thinking about the broader economic development ecosystem. All those things we're really hearing right now, renewed interest and renewed support. And so would love to have this be a dialogue and hear a little more about what's on your mind and what you think would be most important if we were able to get that voice to, broader policymakers, broader investors, and to businesses themselves as they think about expansion plans. So let me show you a little bit on the next page of some of the research that we've done, which grounds this in a picture essentially of the landscape of America and how we think about the clusters of economic activity and how that means that, you might have just thought historically, okay, let me think about urban, or let me think about Sun Belt, let me think about Rust Belt. We wanted to do more of a sophisticated cluster analysis to think about what the archetypes of different communities were. And this is because as we looked at rural, we wanted to also do an important amount of myth busting, because when we started having these conversations, we were hearing, people thought that rural was agriculture only. They thought rural was all white communities. They thought all of rural was in economic decline, for instance, and all those things are really not true. And so, about 46 million people live in rural. More than half of all counties are defined as rural. And important for this conversation, manufacturing is the biggest contributor to rural GDP. And so when we think rural, we actually really need to think manufacturing, and this is only going to be more the case moving forward. I imagine this is no surprise to all of you, but has been an important anchor for us in dialogue with government leaders and investors to say, this is really, you need to have a more updated picture of who rural is today. So moving to the next, I'll tell you a little bit more about our archetypes that I had mentioned. So this is rural specific. So the colored pieces in the map here are rural counties. And important for us is this bright blue color around manufacturing workshops. So these are really the rural communities where manufacturing as the focus is the dominant industry. We see more than 12 million people live in these rural communities, and it's the largest contributor to GDP from rural by far, as you see in the comparison. Agriculture, obviously important and continues to be really important for a ton of reasons for us as consumers and from a national security standpoint, but is significantly smaller, is a quarter of the size, but obviously dominates a lot in the American imagination as we think about who is rural. So moving on from here, we'd like to talk a little bit about the what's coming. And I think this is likely also no surprise to many of you, but I think just making the connection though to what this means for rural is something that we did original research on and that we've seen really, open folks' eyes as they think about what's ahead for the next couple decades. That there's been more than $1 trillion of announced advanced manufacturing investments coming to the US, starting really in COVID and thinking about supply chain disruption, moving now through reshoring and national security focus on presence in America. And through this, we're seeing more than 2/3 of those announced investments are within commute distance to rural America. So this is really a generational opportunity for there to be new economic activity that is coming for the benefit of rural, that's taking advantage of all of that rural has to offer, and creating a significant wage opportunities for workers in these jobs. Some of the analysis that we did looks and is also likely no surprise to any of you, but you could expect as a worker about a 40% wage bump if you can make it into one of these jobs that's coming to rural America. So a really meaningful opportunity there, but that obviously puts quite a bit of pressure, in particular on K-12 ecosystems, as we think about some of the real promise of these jobs are that they aren't requiring a degree beyond high school. Well, that means that K-12 then is your preparation factory for advanced manufacturing, and we need to think about what that means. Moving on to the next, it's, as I had started to say, we've been in dialogue with a number of manufacturers directly and trying to hear, what will it take for really for these investments to be successful? What are they looking for from government ecosystems? What are they looking for in their workers? We heard, I think, first and foremost is a focus on core literacy and numeracy continues to be the priority. And so really wanting to make sure that K-12 is producing a set of students who have those fundamentals and that they feel like those can't be done anywhere else, and that once you've missed that opportunity, that becomes that much harder. And so really asking that there be that pure core focus on the fundamentals, while also being open to and implementing career-connected learning and where there's evidence around career-connected learning. With the Walton Family Foundation, we did research on this in particular that we commissioned through Gallup, where we looked at how many workers and in particular how many students who are still in K-12 are looking for career-connected learning. Because there had been some chatter in the ecosystem that some of you may have heard that students don't want this, the new generation, they're not open to these jobs, or they're not looking for, they're not looking for these opportunities. And we found that was absolutely not the case. We found a vast majority, close to 80% of students were saying that they wanted career-connected learning and that they wanted things in particular like apprenticeships while they were still in high school. but fewer than half of students were actually having any exposure to these types of jobs, much less actually having that meaningful career-connected learning where there's evidence about how much that helps with motivation, a focus on STEM, getting some of that early exposure, and really helping students be ready from the beginning for that, that major wage gain opportunity that I had mentioned. I'd love to hear in feedback as we close in a minute, any thoughts on that point and what you're hearing from your members or those that you engage with about what they'd like to see from K-12, but that's been at least a little bit of the spirit from us. And I'd say maybe one other thing, you know, on this point that is also likely very familiar to you is, you know, there is this substantial wage premium. And so our research had found something like a 40% opportunity for wage growth from the new investments that were coming. Broader research sees in general about a 35% pay increase, higher gains, thinking about chemicals, transportation equipment, electronics. But the premium, you know, is focused around capital intensive production, specialized skills for operating expensive machinery, historically strong unionization. And manufacturing has therefore been this pathway to middle class stability. And manufacturing is still punching above its weight, you know, despite the fact that there has been some erosion in terms of the share in the US economy. We still see manufacturing providing about 20% of good jobs in America, even though employing only about 10% of the workforce overall. And so that, I think, to us is part of this continued imperative that if we're looking at creating opportunity for all, if we're looking at expanding the potential for rural workers in particular, this is really the moment to do so. And so last, I'll tell you just a little bit about questions that we would suggest that leaders in the ecosystem ask. And just in the interest of time, I can show you a few more of the examples on the last page, but I'll go to here first and would welcome your input on these. You know, how are you aligning new investments with the unique strengths of rural? And so how are your members and how are your communities, especially those with a rural presence, thinking about taking advantage of this moment? What are the partnerships around the workforce pipeline? What are their anchor institution partnerships, if we think about with community colleges, for instance, or even with healthcare institutions? How can those help boost regional economies connected to the manufacturing opportunity? And then finally, where have you seen collaborative cross-sector efforts and investments really make a difference? If we have a second, Matt, actually, I'll go back to
Please.
page just to tell you a little bit about a couple of these K-12 partnerships that we think are exciting. You may be familiar with these, but just in the spirit of showing you what good looks like. You know, we've seen for Blue Oval SK, you know, a training center, VR maintenance labs, earn while you learn programs. One of the biggest barriers we've heard about some of the non-evidence-based career-connected learning is that it's under the assumption that you can learn and be unpaid, which is just not realistic typically when everybody in a family needs to be an earner at some stage of life. Thinking about the HMG Meta Plant, the focus there on quick start pathways, which is also providing K-12 exposure and is part of actually a much broader advanced manufacturing ecosystem. And then I would say for the Appalachian Regional Commission, I think there what's exciting is that they've really thought about who the local workforce partners need to be as well. And so, and really with a specific look at what inside of advanced manufacturing are they best positioned for, including some pieces of the defense supply chain. And then finally, Northrop Grumman has done quite a bit on this with the Partnership for Local and Community Colleges and expanding the skill base in particular in engineering and manufacturing more broadly through their investments. So just a few examples that are hopefully food for thought and would really welcome comments and reactions. And I know folks mentioned if you were interested in more on our research, here are two of our primary pieces, and then we'd also be happy to share more and follow up. So thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, it's awesome, Sarah. Talk a little bit about how you guys lean in, you know, in the open source manner. So like I mentioned Accenture and Deloitte and whatever, you know, Deloitte's got their center of, I forget what it's called now, of Insights, I think it's called. And they're a free open source group that works with our federal agencies and Argonne National Laboratory in developing a tool and a metrics tool and playbook free, open source, so regions can self-assess gaps in their manufacturing ecosystem of support. And you guys are just a treasure trove of insight as well, just like Accenture and others. Like, what's your company's dedication to that kind of work, so that folks, because not every region has a bunch of money to pay for this, and with all due respect, right, that's a issue that we have. If we're going to strengthen the American project, we can do it incrementally, but we need really these leaps of change, which is why I was talking about that RFI. I'm curious about if you guys are responding to that RFI too. But anyway, I've thrown a lot at you. Tell us a little bit about how you guys lean into to helping regions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do, so through what Kellum put in the chat, some of our research, we do intend to share freely. And so I'd say please follow up with me and Kellum on any of that if you'd like to see more, and if any of that would be helpful to your regions. We also convene pretty freely and broadly. And so we'd love to make some of those opportunities open to you all, I think, to come together to share lessons learned. And then we're also working on making our archetypes tool, for instance, something that can be public facing. So with the same intention. So as you may be putting together information about your region, you're wanting to look at those cuts of data, you're wanting to be able to play with that so that it's not static. Feel free to come to us for anything you need in that respect, but we'll make something, because we've heard some interest in this recently, that we can make be a little bit more self-serve. So that's something that's in the pipeline. And then we also broadly, we have been participating with a number of other organizations who have been focused on this. So we've come off of a handful of events with Heartland Forward, for instance. We have been also bringing together a number of philanthropists who are working to support regions in this way. So those are just a few of the examples. But yes, we intend to be a resource. We're excited about the innovation across the country and would welcome dialogue. And we're working with a few state governments more directly as well. So you may run into us in that respect.
Interesting on that front. So AMCC is going to be doing a workshop this week at California's Economic Summit. So they've got an interesting new model of this bottom-up structure that some states are moving towards. So it'd be interesting to share information about that. Maybe you guys are going to be there. Yeah, you and or your other reps at McKinsey are welcome to participate in this 30-minute call. Just like these folks, any week and all weeks, and get the free AMCC update newsletter. They're both platforms to put out your evidence-based research and insights. So a hearty thank you for being on, number one, Sarah, and number two, please continue to engage with us. Jim, yeah, we have a minute left.
Understood. Thank you very much. Great presentation, Sarah. I just wanted to share in the K-12 space a shout out to the What's So Cool About Manufacturing video contest. I know it's growing immensely here in Pennsylvania. There are thousands of videos out there, but we're seeing a large uptick because of the parents as well as the teachers realizing what today's manufacturing is about and that there is a career and money's to be made. Enough said.
Great.
Oh, great call out, Jim. Yeah, it's in New York now, and it's now in Colorado, as I understand. And so that that's like a collaboration opportunity, Sarah, that some of your philanthropic partners or whatever might be interested. Shouldn't that be a national competition, for example? Getting the parents to be at these 5-minute manufacturing video competitions is the kind of thing that we can really move the needle with. Anyway, we're at time. We value you guys' half hour every week and try to stay right on time. Thanks for being on the AMCC call. Send us information that we can include in the AMCC update newsletter this Friday for Californians that are going to be at the California Economic Summit this week. Look forward to meeting you there, and we'll be back in touch next Monday. Have a great week.
Thank you.